All right, so it's a little bit after the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and start. My name is Mindi Hoffmaster. I'm a part of the Rodeo Adventure Posse, and tonight we're going to be talking about endurance events. So thank you all for joining. We're really excited to have you here and share some of our trips, tips, tricks, and fun and bad things that we've all learned over the past. So if you go ahead and change the slide there, I'll do a quick introduction of the folks that are presenting. I'm second to the left there, but we also have Maria, Laura, and Kimberly. And again, we're all part of the Rodeo Adventure Posse. We all actually, I've known Kimberly for a number of years. I actually met her through doing endurance riding, and then met Maria and Laura through the Posse through COVID. So it's been, we joke, it's been kind of fun and interesting, haha. But the great thing here is that we're going to go through some different topics. So a couple housekeeping items. If you have a question, we want this to be fun. We want this to be interactive. We want to make sure that, we're hitting all the points that you want to hear about. But if you do have a question, there should be a chat room, and put it in the chat room. We do want to get through the presentation so that we can leave a lot of time at the end to answer anything and everything that you might have. So yay. And I just saw Maria just put, hey, post questions here. So please, we want to hear, we want your questions. The great thing is that all four of us have a whole wide variety of experience in doing endurance events, right? Because when we started talking about, who do we want to present, yeah, I've been doing these for literally probably 20, 25 years. But, and some of the other gals were like, well, I'm newer to this. I don't really know. And we're like, that's perfect, right? Because you have, again, a whole range of experience that is going to be drawn upon. So with the next slide, what I'm going to do is just kind of give a quick overview of the outline of what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to be talking about training. We're going to be talking about your gear. We're going to be talking about nutrition and hydration, planning for the unexpected, what to expect during event week and or day, and the last one, unmentionables that are going to be very female specific, quite frankly, and things that if you went into the bike shop to get help, maybe the guys would not be able to answer questions, or that you really wouldn't want to talk to them about. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with our first slide, and that would be training.
Sorry, I was muted. Kimberly Newfer here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about training. My background, I've ridden and raced bikes for a long time. A lot of time spent at the velodrome, racing on the track, in addition to racing road, mountain, and more recently, these crazy endurance gravel races. So how do you train for these things? Good question. So there's a concept called periodization. Anyone heard of that before? I know we don't have a big group here, but raise your hand if you heard about periodization. So periodization is not necessarily about getting your period, although we know that that happens. But the idea behind periodization is that when training, you have sort of ascending difficulty of training blocks coupled with planned rest and recovery. So you might have a hard week, and then you might have an easy week. You may have a long ride coupled with rest, coupled with a day of intervals, all of that. You can go way down the rabbit hole with training, but I think the biggest thing in preparation for doing a long ride or a long event is don't go out day one and try to ride 100 miles. If your goal is a 100-mile race, you need to start out slowly with your training. If you've already been training, that's great. You can just add on to that. But I would say, start out with some, rides that feel comfortable to you, and then build on those. So if I tend to think about my training in terms of hours rather than miles. So if I am used to riding an hour a day and then a 3-hour ride on the weekend and maybe another 3-hour ride on the second day of the weekend. When I'm preparing for an event, I'm going to gradually increase the difficulty, the length over time. And I'm going to be sure to couple that with rest and recovery and easy days. So again, this is sort of just an overview of training, but the idea of periodization is really based on the idea of adaptive stress. So your body adapts to stress by getting stronger. So you stress your body, you rest, and during that rest time, you build more muscle mass and you build more endurance, more cardio capacity and whatnot. So with periodization, you are going to have cycles of harder and harder work. But I think the biggest thing is, and I had a coach say this to me once, that most athletes aren't overtrained, but they're under rested. So we tend to get excited about training. We love doing those intervals maybe, and you do them, and you don't take enough rest time. So that's my big point. One of my big points is like, take time for yourself, take time off the bike, figure out some different cross training activities, and incorporate those into your schedule. So train your body, but you also need to train your mind. So how do you do this? This is a good question. Like, how do you train for being out in the saddle for prolonged periods of time? Whether, if you're used to riding 2 hours, well, how do you train yourself to ride 4 hours or 6 hours? If you're used to, training 50 or a 70-mile ride, how are you going to train to do 100 or 200 miles? How are you going to mentally train for that? I was a runner at Baylor University. I was a half miler, and I ran competitively all from childhood through college. And one of the biggest things that I got into was visualization. So visualizing my event. So, and I did this probably more as a runner, but I think over time I've learned to do this more as a cyclist. So it's really about thinking about, like, visualizing yourself doing the event. So when I was a runner, I would visualize myself running my 800 meters, and I had it broken down into 4 200-meter pieces. So similarly, if you're doing a 200-mile race or ride, you may want to break that down into 4 50-mile rides. So instead of a big 200-mile ride, you're going to break it down into 4 50s. So, and that I think will help you sort of get through like the long slog of a 200 or a really long race. So visualizing what you want that to do. I would literally like see myself running around the track as a kid. I'm going to admit somebody, hold on. But you can do that also, on the bike. Like, what do you want it to look like? What are you going to do when it starts to get really hard at mile 162 during the Unbound or Dirty Kansas gravel? I remember this being a really mentally difficult time for me in particular. And one of the things that I did was I had a mantra, and it was forward movement. All I need to do is I need to keep moving forward. Like, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to pedal forward as slow as I need to kind of regain my composure, take in more nutrition and hydration, and keep going. There's another piece that I think is really important, and that is really to learn how to be with your thoughts, your feelings, and your bodily sensations. I know this may sound sort of woo-woo. I work as a therapist, so this is something that I work with a lot of people on, but just tuning in to what's going through your head, how are you feeling, and how is that showing up in your body? I think it's really important to, when you're out riding, when you're in the midst of a difficult situation, whether it be a ride, a race, to really tune in to what's going on inside of you. A lot of times we get caught up in this negative self-talk. Your inner critic comes out You're not going fast enough. You're not doing well. You should be going faster. You should have been at a 15-mile-an-hour pace on this. Why aren't you doing this? So being able to tune into that, listen to it, acknowledge it, and then work on on changing it. So having a mantra that works for you, that counters that inner critic, that irrational self-talk that comes up when you're in the middle of a difficult time. Another piece that I like to think about on these is delayed gratification. So, and what I say with that is like, if I'm doing a really long event, I'll have like special food, and we're going to talk a little bit more about food and hydration, but I'll have some special food that I will save and sort of use as a reward for myself. Like if I get through this first 50 miles, I'm going to get to eat that, I don't know. I can tell you that when I did White Rim in a day, it was all about the grapefruit honey stinger chews. Like, oh, I'm going to get to have a grapefruit honey stinger chew when I get through this part of the ride. So delay gratification. I use that also with music. I'm not the kind of person that I don't ride with music, but on these long events, I will have some sort of iPod with me, but I won't allow myself to use it until I get through a certain point. And that's just me. I mean, if you need to ride with music, that's different. But for me, it's sort of a carrot out there in front of me that I like to have. Positive attitude goes a huge, long way. Just keeping, again, that inner critic, that negative self-talk in check with a positive attitude. And then the last thing that I want to say is just really to think about riding your own race. Like it's so easy to get caught up in the fury of the start of an event or the start of a race. Your nerves are high, your excitement is high, and a lot of people are going to go out super hot. And it's easy to sort of go with that. And then, in the end, maybe you pay for that. So I like to think about ride your own race. I rode with a teammate of mine when I did Dirty Kansas 100 a couple of years ago, and she's like, "We can go get that group," and I'm like, "You go ahead. Like I just need to do my own thing." And the corollary to that was at the end, she had a hard time. It was her first really long gravel event, and she's like, "I gotta just get through this last bit. Will you tell me a story?" And so I ended up telling her story. But I think having some of those things that you go to in your head when you're struggling is key as well. So anyway, I think that's all that I have about training. Next, we're going to talk about gear.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Fury. I'm going to talk a little bit about gear. So we have one major rule is that you should test everything in training and not try anything new on race day. I know the temptation to put on that really cute new kit that you just bought. It's really tempting, but don't try anything new on race day. And if there's something that you did buy, a new piece of like a new tool or something, try it out, and also make sure you have a backup of something that you're familiar with. So next slide. So these are the biggies, the things that you must have. Your bike, and including the wheels. When we were preparing this presentation, Mindi told us about a time she showed up without her wheels. They were left on the top of her car. So it can get really nerve-wracking when you're showing up to an event and it's exciting. So just make a mental checklist to yourself. I know when I leave the house, I do keys, purse, cell phone. So bike, wheels, helmet, shoes. A little mental checklist of the things you really need to even get past the start line. So your helmet, your shoes, saddle. As I said before, don't try anything new at race day, but a saddle is important that you've had it about a month and gotten some good miles in on it. here is a kind of more detailed list of items. Oh. Okay, so do you want to go back, Kimberly? Your water transport, that's a big thing, especially as the mileage gets longer. Thinking about how you're going to carry water with you and whether the event is supported and how often you'll be able to refill. So maybe you're just able to get by with bottles. Maybe you're wearing a hip pack or a vest. But thinking about that, and also thinking about what happens if you lose a bottle, because on some of these rides they get a little rowdy and rut it out, and a water bottle might go flying out of your bag or out of your bike. So what happens if you lose a bottle? Is that your only water, or what is that a backup? Think about your tires that you're using for the event and whether you're going tubed or tubeless. I love tubeless tires. I live in Colorado. We get goat head thorns that will pop a tire. You will change the tire and you'll pop another. So tubeless has been a game changer for me in rides, especially in rough terrain. And learning how to put tubeless tires on, fill it with sealant, is really important. Other thing is sunglasses or eye protection. As these events, you'll be following close by or behind other people. Pebbles and rocks get flown up from tires, and you want to make sure that your eyes are protected from both the sun and grit. If you're riding into the evening hours or dark, I have a pair of just clear safety glasses. They're cheap. I don't care what happens to them, and they're great for at night. And a cell phone. Make sure it's charged. Download Google Maps for the area that you're in. For offline mode, download your maps elsewhere on your ride with GPS. Cell phone is always a good tool to have. So next one. Okay, so this is a more detailed list, and I won't go through everything, as a lot of this you kind of will learn as you go and as you train. Like I said, you don't want to try anything new in an event. So a lot of this you'll be carrying with you during your training rides and practicing before the event. One of the big things that was helpful to me was getting a GPS computer. I didn't have that when I first started riding and would carry paper maps. The computer, it was an investment, but it brought a lot of confidence to my riding and ability to complete these events. However, as it is an electronic device, it could die. So carrying backups, either a paper route or the route downloaded on your phone, is definitely an important thing as well. Thinking about, as I said before, how are you going to carry your water and other gear, whether you have a frame bag, saddle bag. Those are all things to think about. If you do go tubeless, bacon or a Dynaplug will get you out of a hard spot. I have, Britt, I see your comment. What's bacon? It's like little strips that you can plug your tire if you get a slash. And they actually, I have used them in tires that have been slashed, like pretty good gashes. And it gives the sealant in the, yes, there was an example. So the piece goes into the tire, and you can get what's called a tubeless tackle kit. And it comes with little pieces of bacon and a little, it's almost like a tweezers to help stick it into the tire. You can watch YouTube videos on how to insert it, but it gives something for the sealant to grab onto and plug that hole. When I was at DK, I hit one of these little water crossings kind of hard, and I slashed both front and rear tires at the same time. And fortunately, I had the tools to get those to plug up. And those tires, I think I hit that about mile 50. It was just after the first checkpoint, and those tires lasted me the entire event. So they're reliable. They actually are pretty remarkable. Kimberly, can you go back? Tires and tubes, carrying spare tubes, even if you are tubeless, is also important, because sometimes it may not be able to get that plugged. With that, I have on my list baby wipes. It's the very bottom, but I would say they're very important, and they have multiple uses. So if you do have to change your tire and put in a tube, you can clean out that sealant with it. If you have any GI issues, you are covered. Baby wipes have many uses. You can also clean off the grease if you're playing with your drivetrain. One other, depending on the type of ride, some people recommend a spare derailleur hanger to carry with you. Anything that's on this list, tools or parts, make sure if you're going to carry it, you know how to use it. It doesn't do you any good to carry a spare derailleur hanger if you don't know how to swap it out. You may come across a friendly fellow rider to help you out, but in order to be self-sufficient, it's really important to learn how to use your tools and make minor repairs. Before I did DK, a local bike shop that I went to had a clinic. It was like a 4-week clinic of basic bike repair and maintenance. And it was hands-on. You learned how to do a lot of different minor repairs, and it gave me the confidence that I knew how to do it myself, and I could get myself out of a bad situation, or, you know, not necessarily bad, but I would be able to get myself to the finish line. YouTube is a great resource. That's how I learned how to put tubeless tires on. So there's a lot of resources out there, and, you know, ask your friends. We're all happy to help share information and how to do different things. If you are riding at night, lights with longer battery life are important. My first DK, my headlight was blinking the warning that I'm gonna die just as I was rolling into the finish line. And I was like trying to turn the light down to the lowest setting as possible to keep it, conserve the light through the finish, and it made it, but barely. So after that, I invested in a light that had a bigger battery. You can get ones that have extra chargers, or yeah, there's lots of different options. Just think about your lights and how long you'll need them for. With that, a battery pack and cables is something that I carry with me, so that I can charge my phone, I can charge my computer, and I can also plug in lights if I'm having that issue. If you are doing a ride with checkpoints and you can stash gear at checkpoints, spare chain and tires and tubes, those are all great things to keep. If it's in the summer and it's hot, it sounds silly, but ice in a knee-high hose tied up and around your neck, it's a game changer. It's really nice. I prefer sun sleeves in warm and sunny weather over sunscreen. They're like lightweight sleeves. They're almost like arm warmers, but they're not providing warmth. They just cover you up from the sun. So that's something I use. I also carry sunscreen, but I just prefer the sun sleeves over actual sunscreen on my arms. But yeah, just preparing for the different types of weather. Clothing wise, your favorite shorts, the ones that you've ridden in before. Again, nothing new. A hat or a headband to keep that sweat out of your eyes. There's nothing worse than getting sweat in your eyes and it's all, you're crying because it's salty and it hurts. And then my piece as a more chesty woman, a good bra that makes a huge difference. I get mine from a running store. They're designed for high impact and to reduce some of the bouncing. As you'll find in some of the gravel events, roads can be rough. And so having the girls strapped in makes a big difference. And if you're traveling to an event, pack for all kinds of weather so that you can choose from many different things the morning of as you kind of figure out what the weather is going to do. So packing towards event, it's not the time to pack light. That's next one. Again, practice, practice, practice. This is a picture from RPI, Rebecca's Private Idaho. My friend got a flat, or she slashed her tire. We're working on replacing it with that tubeless tackle kit and the bacon. And neutral support came by. He lost his pump a couple miles back, so he just sat and watched us do our repair. So he wasn't much of a help, but fortunately we had a good idea of how to handle the situation and had practiced and used our tools before. So that's the biggest thing. Use the tools you're going to carry. Watch YouTube videos. Make sure you feel comfortable and confident in your ability to do basic repairs. That's it.
All right.
So,
Oh, I was just like, who's on for nutrition and hydration?
I was going to say, I can address that. If you'd like. I can't remember who we decided.
I think we were all going to just chime in on it.
Yeah. So the most important thing is we had all talked about, this is super personal. You need to find out what works for you. I'll just say one thing and then I'll let the rest of you talk. For instance, I love Perpetuum. Everybody else hates it. All right. Like, and it gives them GI issues. And for me, it works. So again, number one, highly personal.
Yeah, I have a crazy sensitive stomach. So I've had some really bad situations, aka why you need baby wipes, because things happen or your stomach doesn't take to something well, which is why we're preaching, don't try something new on your race day or ride day. For me, eating real food, not just chews or goo or bars. Again, I have a sensitive stomach. So those things aren't that great for me, but having like peanut butter and jelly sandwich or like a turkey sandwich, or personally, I love Oreos. They get me through a lot of rides. But that's something I recommend. I also love banana bread too. So real food and test those out as you're training. Bring different things on different rides and see what works for you. Like, especially when you're like kind of bonking, like what works for you. Oreos is what works for me when I'm bonking. So those are all really good things to bananas. Yes, definitely bananas. Those are all really good things to work out in your training plan as well.
Something that I have found that sounds really weird is the toddler baby food pouches. When I am when I'm not wanting to eat anything more or chew anything more after however many hours on the bike, that's something that's calories. It's not the goo chews upset my stomach. The gels I can't stomach. But the baby food, it's real. It's just pureed fruit and vegetables. But it's something that I can get down to continue to get myself calories and fuel. And it's kind of weird, but it's worked for me.
Yeah. Another thing that's really important is I can go like 70 miles without eating, and then obviously I die, but I just have a really hard time remembering. I get so worked up in the ride and like I get really focused that I forget to eat, which I don't recommend anybody to do. So something I keep in my head is like every hour or 15 to 20 miles And we also noted, like, you can put a timer. Some GPSs do it, watches do it. There's a lot of different, your phone, there's so many different, just look at your equipment and see what was best for you to set a timer. But especially in a race or a ride, like, there's so much going on that it sounds stupid, but it's really easy to forget to eat. Especially if you don't feel hungry, which you're not going to always feel hungry, but that's when you need to eat the most. When you feel hungry, that's when you know you did something wrong. So remembering to eat something every hour or 15 to 20 miles has kind of worked for me, at least. And you can tailor it. Maybe it's 30 minutes for you or whatever it is for you. Just make sure you're eating at a consistent level, especially for, 100 miles or 200 miles. Like, you can't enter that bonk fest. It's not going to go well, or it's very hard to get yourself out of.
And lastly, because I'm going to keep us moving along, I want to give a shout out to savory. Like, I cannot do sweet all day long. And so hard-boiled egg, bacon, beef jerky, pretzels, pierogies, something that's not sugary is what I tend to like. Crunch, bag of potato chips, crunch them up and just down them.
Mexican Coke at the aid station.
Yes.
Pickles. I love pickles.
Pickles, especially the juice. Pickled juice.
Pickled juice. Yeah.
It sounds so weird, but at an aid station, it's good.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, and it's okay to laugh at what I'm going to be sharing with you all. So prepare for the worst, hope for the best. This picture was taken not at the last, I think that it's Mid-South now, it was land run before. Not at the one in what year were we, not in 2020. This was the one from 2017 when only 165 people out of 1,000 finished. I was one of them. And I did everything wrong, but guess what? I'm an experienced endurance rider. I thought I was prepared. So I'm going to kind of talk through the things that that you may not have thought about, because these have all happened to me. Yeah, and I'm the one that I did leave my wheel in another state when I went to another race, just so you know. So you think it's like, well, duh, of course you're going to bring your wheel. But when you're packing and doing all these things, and if you're flustered and time crunched, you do forget things. So number one, take more than you think you might need. And that could be water, that could be as well as food. So, we're kind of gearing this towards events that have aid stations, right? Well, years and years ago, I did the not the triple bypass, the Elephant Rock, right? If you're familiar with that, it's a 100-mile century. It's a ride, it's not a race. And at the last aid station, guess what? They ran out of water, and it was in the 90s. So, but luckily I'm the one who always wears a Camelback. That's what I'm comfortable with, along with bottles. But take more than you think you need, because what if you get to that aid station and they don't have what you were expecting? Okay. Another one on backups, and Laura had mentioned this in her gear list. So great, you've got your Garmin, you've got the route loaded. This actually happened in my last Unbound race. I did the 200 miles. Again, I know what I'm doing, right? That was my 5th one. So I'm pretty familiar. So I had the route loaded into my Garmin, and the particular Wahoo, whatever, and it's got a super long battery life. No problem. Oh, it was a problem. It died. Okay. No problem. I had my backup battery with my cable, which Laura had talked about. Guess what? This wasn't completely charged. It turns out this died. But I went to my backup for my backup, which was the laminated sheets. And I wrote in, and I found some other poor soul who had also lost everything. And so the two of us together rode the last 60, I think it was 60 or 70 miles of Unbound with laminated cue sheets, which is not fun. It takes a lot of time because nothing's marked out there. And if you've done that, some of the signs are like, oh my gosh, am I supposed to turn here? But had we not had those laminated sheets, we would have had to just follow people. All right. Another one that that I've done wrong in this particular picture. This was quote unquote only 100-mile race, right? So how long can it, I mean, and it's in Oklahoma, there was only 5,000 feet of climbing. How long can it take you? If you notice this picture, it's dark out, right? And that morning at the hotel, I had even like said, oh, and I had brought lights. Should I bring a light or not bring a light? And I'm like, oh, come on. I'm gonna, I know that I can comfortably do this route in 8 hours. It took me 11 and a half hours, and we'll get to that in the next slide. If you look at that picture, my bike and myself are covered in red mud, all right? I didn't have a light because why would it take me that long to only ride 100 miles? But the weather was so awful that, yeah, that it took me a lot longer. So that also goes back to make sure you have more than you think you need, all right? And the other thing is, these are the silly little things that you think about. Take more than you think you need. I know how to do repairs. I knew how to, and again, and Laura had mentioned this in the gear, not just tires, right? And can I change a tube? And what happens if I slash a sidewall? Especially if it's raining, the chances that you're going to shear off your derailleur, unless you're like riding a single speed, go up incrementally. Great. I had a derailleur. I know how to do all this. Well, guess what? It never got above 35 degrees that day. So number one, I couldn't feel my hands. So if you've ever tried to replace that derailleur or derailleur hanger, it's hard, it's small parts, right? I couldn't move my hands. And the other thing that you probably won't think about, and I see a couple of you wearing glasses, is guess what? I have contacts, but I can't see things without my readers. So I didn't pack my readers. Why would I bring glasses on a ride? I couldn't fix it. So luckily, and this is where Laura mentioned maybe some nice soul will help you. I just happened to shear off my derailleur next to someone, which I hadn't seen anybody in hours. So the fact that this happened right next to someone was like a godsend. He turned my bike into a single speed. But after about 2 miles, my gears just stopped turning, like nothing was moving. So I'm off the bike in that picture, right? I ended up running in like the last 8 miles. And on this ride, because my Garmin died as well, and I didn't have cue sheets, the guy in the background there is now a dear friend of mine. He helped me out because again, I didn't know where I was. And then my contacts were all jacked up and I didn't have lights and it was dark out. So again, take more than you think you need. Backups for the backups for the backup, just in case. And now we're going to go to weather. Are you really prepared? So they had told us the day of this race that it was going to rain. All right, I've ridden in rain. Like I live in Colorado. I've ridden in the snow. Like I've got Gore-Tex. I've got everything. Yeah, great. It took me 4 hours to get to the first checkpoint. No problem. It took me more than 8 to get back. That was the problem. So so these are a few of my little hacks that I learned after this race. This race actually, I joke, gave me PTSD. Like I was so freaked out the next year to go back. And then of course it was perfect weather. Lots of us in Colorado have dogs. This is a dog poop bag. You know what you can do with this before it starts raining? You can put these over your socks. Also, I don't have an example, but plastic gloves to put underneath your normal gloves. And I will warn you that your feet and your hands will sweat, absolutely. But it is way better than, and I was so cold and I even had a change of everything at the aid station. So I had all fresh Gore-Tex to go what ended up being the last 8.5 hours. But I'm not kidding. And I'll talk about this in a little bit with the mental, right? Like how, I heard some great suggestions of how do I keep motivated? Okay, well, how do you keep motivated when everything goes to hell in a handbasket, which sometimes it does. I literally, when I was riding, I was so cold. Like I was so cold. They were the Jeeps were taking people off, like with hypothermia. And I was just too stupid to like know that, or, you know, or too bullheaded to even consider quitting. But I remember my hands were so awfully cold and painfully cold that I would like mentally, I was like, oh, if I was going to sacrifice my fingers and have them like cut off, like which one would I want to be cut off first? It got to that point. Same thing with my feet, right? So these godsend. The other thing, and again, and these don't weigh anything. Same thing. Hey, we've all gone to the hotel. You know what? This is a shower cap. I had to put this on a couple years ago on just a training ride because it started, same thing. I was down south in the middle of Elbert County by myself, because I do ride by myself a lot, which is, you know, why you should have backups for backups for backups. And I did have to put this over my helmet, and it was great. It kept my head warm. Whoops. There we go. Repairs. Do you know how to do on the fly repairs? And that was one of the things that I discussed, like, okay, that's great. I know how to fix a derailleur, but I can't, like my hands are frozen. So make sure you do, again, know how to do those on the fly repairs. Another thing that I personally love, duct tape. Duct tape can work for so many different things, and it can, I've seen someone in Leadville 100 once that had duct tape wrapped around their seat post to hold it up because their seat post had broken. So a little bit about that. And then again, be prepared mentally, right? Because we're all talking about like, okay, let's get motivated. How am I going to keep moving forward? Well, how do you do that? Yeah, trash bag to cover your whole, absolutely. And again, I'm talking worst case scenario, and I'm not trying to scare you all off. These are all just the things that I've done and learned from. And every race, or every event, you're going to pick up some amazing tips. I did not know about the bacon, Laura. I agree with the comment about it's like a great food, and it's like manna from heaven. But be prepared mentally when everything goes to crap, right? So for me, I do listen to music. I will not listen to music at the beginning of some of these races, especially with these mass starts with 1,000 people. Absolutely not. But I can tell you, like literally after the 50-mile mark in this particular crappy race, and by the way, it never got above 35 degrees. It was awful. Even the Jeeps were getting stuck. There's like pictures afterwards that Jeeps were helping other Jeeps get out of the stuck mud. So I had just a tiny little iPod, and after the 50-mile turnaround, which was where all the smart people decided to that they didn't want any part of this anymore, which is probably what I should have done. I turned on my iPod, but again, I didn't see people for literally hours. Also, I heard, I move forward. I made up curse words. Like I literally screamed. Like I screamed bloody murder. I was so frustrated because there were literally like, I figured it out. I probably carried my bike because you don't want to ride through the mud because there's the potential of, breaking stuff. I carried my bike for about 3 hours. So it's okay to yell as well. But, you got to try to hold it together. It doesn't matter how you do it. But again, the end result is you want to cross the finish line.
Okay, so you made it to event week. So the first thing I want to talk about is what you're riding that week. While it's totally important to keep riding your bike, you want to make sure that you're doing no more hard efforts on that last week. The last thing you want to do is show up to your event being fatigued. That is not great. I have done that before, and that's why I'm telling you not to do it. So light spins, just your after work spins, so 15 miles. You want to stay loose, but you don't want to go, climb a mountain pass or something. So keep it light and stay fresh. Also, staying hydrated all week is really important. when you're doing these endurance rides, even when you're staying hydrated, you're really dehydrated. Like these events take so much out of you. So making sure you're going into the event hydrated is really important. You want your body to be at its best shape. As someone who struggles to drink water, I just apparently survive on coffee. So it's important to actually be aware of yourself this week and what you're putting into your body. It's something I don't always think of. So that is really important. Another huge thing is rest. I don't know if you guys are like me, but the night before the event, I literally probably sleep an hour. I get so worked up thinking about every scenario. And even though I've done these events a lot and they're not new to me, it's still scary, and it's still maybe not scary, but it's still, nerves will always get the best of you sometimes. And it gets the best of me when it comes to sleep. So if you can rest for, 4 days prior and then have one crappy night of sleep, that's not going to throw you off. But making sure you definitely stay rested is really important. The next thing is be realistic with how your training went. And I'm saying this as someone who has not always done that. My first century I ever did, I came in as a new cyclist. I had ridden 5 bike rides before that. I didn't even have a gravel bike. I did Mid-South on a mountain bike because that's all I had. And the longest ride I did was 25 miles. And I should have been realistic that week and said, hey, I will drop down to the 50. But I did the century, and it ended up being an okay day, but it was very long and I wasn't realistic. So just looking at yourself, thinking about, how did my training go? Is my goal time different? Do I need to drop down? These are all fine things. But being honest with yourself is really important before you enter something like this, so you don't have a bad day. And then touching on, Kimberly was talking about like breaking down your ride. This is something that gets me through like the night before and the day of. I like to think of like in the last 15 miles, like that after work ride that I can do all the time. And I'm just like, get that TP route done. And, that's what I only have an hour, effort left. And that kind of gets me to the finish line. And then riding, if you can, if you're at the event early or, whatever, if you can ride the first and last 10 to 15 miles of the course, it can be a lifesaver, especially the first, and I'll get into this with mass starts. That's going to be really important. And the last, just for like your mentality, like, the last 15 miles, you're in the home stretch, like adrenaline starts to kick in at those moments when you have that cue that you're almost home, and that's really going to be like your savior to get there. So I think knowing that, especially if you're riding in the dark too, these are really good things to know, because it's really easy to miss something or just not be aware. So if you're able to do that, it's going to help just how confident you feel out there if you do ride either the first or last. And we can go to event day now. And then on event day, some things to know or talk about is the morning. This is something this could be really personal. Some people are a wake up and go. I know when we were talking about this, Mindi said she was a grab and go and start your race kind of person. For me, that doesn't work for me. Again, like I told you, I don't sleep the night before the event. So like even getting down food the event day is a struggle for me. So something that's like little could take me like 30 minutes to get down because my stomach is so worked up. I also have a lot of stomach issues, like I said. So obviously when I'm nervous, like I have to go to the bathroom. So these are all things I want to get out of my system before I start the event. I also, weather changes can happen. So it's like, oh, I wasn't expecting rain and now I need to pack a rain jacket and all these other things. So just waking up early and like starting your day and eating and going to the bathroom and like checking the weather and just getting super prepared, I think actually does help with those nerves too. At least for me. And then mass start. If it's not something you've ever done, some do, timed ones. So there's like a section going out, and some like Mid-South or Unbound, they do these, mass like 1,400 people starts, and they're intimidating if you are not used to it. So what I like to do is just pick a line and stay straight and let people pass you. It can be really easy to get wrapped up in the moment. But when you're doing these endurance rides, you don't need to go 20 miles per hour or full gas out of the, start, because eventually you're going to be passing all of those people that did that and blew up. So just ride your race. Worry about yourself is something that I think is really important. And just stay straight. And people are going to go around you, and that's okay. And just, especially this is where, if you rode the first 15 miles, there's that turn and that's a little sketchy. So I'll come out a little bit to let people by. So knowing and being confident instead of being surprised when you have 1,400 people around you is really important. So I think, getting out there and doing a spin or a shakeout before the event is really important. And then nerves. I've talked about this several times because I am a person who always gets nervous. They're normal. Even the most experienced riders, maybe they'll act like they're not nervous, but they're nervous. Everyone's nervous. It's something that happens, but it's crazy how fast it goes away. As soon as you start and you get over that, immediate kind of everyone's around you, it goes away so fast. You don't even think about that anymore, and just have fun. It's your day, it's your ride. Smiling and laughing is the best part of cycling. So just having a great day is, I think, the most important advice I could give. And that is it for that. Next, we have some unmentionables that we want to talk about. And I think we can all talk about this, but I can speak to some things that, since I'm already talking, and I'm going to go a little bit out of order, but if you've ever experienced saddle sores, and mostly if you have a saddle sore, which can happen when you're riding 200 miles. It's super easy to get that. I found that tea tree oil cream really helps with the inflammation. It's something that is weird, and you don't always want to be like, hey, I have a saddle sore. How do I make this feel better? So that's something that I wish somebody told me. I found that from going deep into the internet and Googling things and reading weird blogs. So that's something. Riding while having your period. Everybody, we talked about this before, and we kind of all had a different method. My method was that I honestly just free bleed. I don't wear anything. I don't wear a tampon. Some people have diva cups, and I know Kimberly talked about has that, so maybe she can talk about her experience with that. But I free bleed because I don't like to worry about having anything, and I bring baby wipes. And that's, I know it's not always the most cleanliness, or it can kind of freak people out, but it doesn't freak me out. But that's something that works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. Yeah, if anybody else wants to chime in on some of these things.
Yeah, a couple of quick things. Always wash your shorts after every ride. It's really important. No panties with the chamois. That's a question that sometimes new riders don't necessarily know about or how to ask. So the point of a padded short is to reduce any rubbing or chafing. And so you want to no underwear, just padded shorts. You can wear some anti-chafe cream, put into the pad lightly. Like I said earlier, bra selection is really important, especially if you're a little bit more chesty. And numbness is not always normal, but not always to be alarmed about as well. It does happen. I know during some of my longer rides, I know my right pinky always goes numb. And it just kind of comes with the territory.
Oh yeah, definitely happens.
Well, I think we'd like to open it up to questions from you guys. Now we have a small group, but we have, you'd like put a question in the chat or just like unmute and talk. Who is doing the last best ride? Is that an actual event, Britt?
What's that? I've never heard of it, but I would love to
I
ride
haven't
it.
either.
Yeah. That sounds amazing.
I'll have to look into it.
So I saw something come up in stage racing. And
Yeah,
I've
that's me.
done, okay, great. So I've done the Breck Epic, which is mountain biking, a number of times. And I wish I would have gotten a coach, right? So we all train differently, but somebody, I think it was Kimberly, had mentioned, about like, you have to rest, right? So you have to get your body used to, riding multiple days at that super hard effort. A couple things, like I literally remember going into the grocery store after like stage 2 and just wandering around, like I was so out of it. I didn't sleep at all, and that killed me. Like I joke, like every day I got bigger and bigger, like bags underneath my eyes. And one of the tips that one of my fellow, my friends who was also doing the race told me, sleeping pills, just to knock you out, because I was so freaked out every day about that. And so it was funny. So I went to when I went and got my like general stuff at the doctor, Advil PM is also fine for me, but same thing, figure out what works for you, because you don't want to take something on the first day that completely knocks you out and makes you feel groggy the next day. The other thing, definitely put as much stuff in. They usually have drop bags, right? Put extra everything. The first year I did the Epic, it rained and they literally called the race. It was so awful. And they had to have ski buses rescue people from the last aid station. So always have dry clothes, always have clean clothes. So even like one of these longer races, another hack that I learned in Unbound is put a clean jersey in there. Do you know how nice it is to put on a clean jersey after sweating and being all gross all day? Like that and a Mexican Coke, I feel like a new person. And then in the stage racing, same thing. Eat whatever you want. I had bacon for dinner one night. Like I ate a whole pound of bacon. The other thing for stage racing, and then I'll shut up, is if you have, fresh socks too, absolutely. And a fresh chamois. If you can put on a whole new kit, do it. You will feel like a new person, even if you're still like have dirt and blood and whatever else all over you. The other thing for stage racing, recovery. It's the most important thing that you can do to get your body ready for the next day. And after recovery, so, they talk about ice baths. I like them. Sometimes I just can't do it. And have your favorite like recovery drink, right? Beer, we all love it. It's not necessarily the best recovery drink after a stage race or any race. Do that after you have like, your recovery drink that works for you. The other thing is if you have them or if you have access to them, I call them just squeezy legs. I have, what are they? Elevated legs, right? And stick those puppies on, have your recovery drink and just relax. But I personally love elevated legs. I know there's other brands as well. They're compression legs basically. And so you slip them on. They feel amazing and they'll help circulate. Get all that lactic acid out of your legs. You're not going to feel 100% though, like on day 6, you're just not. But again, anything you can do to help you recover. Yes, great info, great info, Kia. Anything else for any of us?
One thing to think about is when you're training for long rides, you may not be able to every day, do the full distance before training. But if you do a big weekend where you're doing, 100 miles on Saturday. This is, assuming like a 200-mile race, 100 miles on Saturday, 100 miles on Sunday, and getting some big long rides and time in the saddle in, that can help. And I think it can also help, Britt, for your question about recovery from those long efforts, putting that time in the saddle and sometimes mentally pushing yourself through when you are fatigued can be helpful in giving yourself confidence that you can make it through a longer event.
I totally agree with that. I used to struggle with doing a big day and then be totally burnt out, like not even being like, I didn't feel like I could ride for like 4 days. But what I found is that I actually I had to force myself, even if it's 15 miles the next day. And even if it was at like 11-mile-per-hour pace, it doesn't matter. Just get on your bike. The thing is, like, you just have to get yourself used to it. And it's the same with any kind of stage kind of races as well. Like, you just have to get yourself prepared to be able to do consecutive days like that. And your body will adjust. It's just something you have to force yourself to do sometimes. But it will pay off if you do. And it doesn't have to be hard.
What about the frequency of like stacking efforts? Because like when I stack efforts, obviously like Saturday and Sunday to do like these big long, like, is it useful to like tag on that Monday, even if it's on the trainer? So this is my race. My race is in June, and it's a 5-day stage race through the Cascade Mountains.
I know
A few of the days are Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
Are you coming over for it?
I'm not. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yes. So we had the first race of that series Sunday, and that was fine, but I don't know. I'm okay with doing like 50 or 60 2 days in a row. But then now I'm struggling from like, what do I do from now till June, I guess. And that's my biggest. And there's another 2-day stage race between now and the end of June. So yeah, I guess it's just more of like a timing, like, how do you do life? I have 2 young kids, and like get enough hours on the bike. And not only that, but my husband rides 300 a week too. That's more of like a really personal question.
Yeah, I was gonna say also, are you doing any type of heart rate training, or do you have a power meter?
Yes.
Because, okay, perfect. Yeah. So
heart rate,
because I'm
heart rate based. A lot of interval training on the trainer during the week, because I have to watch my kids and be home and all that. So
no, that's awesome, honestly. And I know, like, I'm notorious for like, I'll start doing interval training and then I'm like, oh, it's too hard. And then I just give up. So kudos to you. But yeah, I would say doing the multiple, like, because for instance, I did a big ride on Saturday and I made myself go mountain biking on Sunday, and it was awful. Like, it hurt so bad. And then and for me on Monday, I just walked. I literally just walked around the neighborhood to try to get some of the lactic acid out. But but I'm also not doing a 5-day stage race this year. I've decided that I just don't need to do that anymore. That's an awesome comment that Laura just did as well with regards to strength training.
I'm also doing. Yeah, I am. So I do.
You're probably, as someone that has done their first bike tour without ever having any sort of training plan in my history, you're more capable than you usually think you are. And day 2 is often the worst, because you have like 3 or 4 more days to go. But doing the things like eating more than just Mindi, bacon sounds great, but eating balanced meals for your evening will help.
That's so hard too, because it's catering and it's camping in the middle of the forest.
Oh, so you're camping.
Yeah, it's
does
a
that
point
mean
to
there's
point.
a stag vehicle where you can have drop bags, like a cooler full of? No.
So they pack you get a giant, like a Home Depot storage tote, and you put all of your belongings in that, and every morning you pack it all up and you send it into a semi truck, and then you see it at the end of the day, and then catering's provided, but there's no drops. There is every 30 miles, I think there's support, like a aid station every 30 miles or so, which I think one of them has like peanut butter and jelly. Like there's supposed to be like a whole food type lunch thing, more than like what you would get at a normal race, because they're wanting to like obviously keep everyone as fueled as you can. But yeah, there's no drop bags. There's lots of sources of extra water, so we carry a filter. We carry a filter just standard with us because we're in the Cascade Mountains. There's like water. I mean, it's not it's not the Midwest or something. Like we cross a creek fairly often.
Real quick on that, I would also suggest taking tablets as well, because here's another one of my great, awesome Mindi stories. I used to adventure race as well, and my filter broke. And I put in a tablet in the Hermosa Creek, because that's where we were down in southwestern Colorado, and I still got Giardia. You do not want Giardia, trust me.
That's awful.
It was awful, yeah. So
but
I
no,
would
it's
still
a good
have
idea to have
backup.
Yeah. So and then
Mindyisms,
this
though,
promoter.
Oh my God, right?
Go ahead,
And what were you
Shannon.
talking about, the promoter?
The promoter is really good with like providing on-course, like the people on the motorcycles, because most of this 5-day stage, or a good amount of it, is on old wagon roads that are no longer like maintained, but they get special ATV things. So like it's, even if you get stuck out there, like you're not going to be left all day, which is always nice.
Good
to know, like if you do like get Giardia or something, then it like starts activating in your system while you're out there. But yeah, Danielle, what did you have to add?
When you're on to day 4 and day 5, the foods that you trained with on training and day 1 and day 2, you might hate them by then. So to speak to Mindy, like extra and prepare for the unexpected. I don't usually want salty crunchy, but by day 4 and day 5, I can't look at another sweet or a waffle. So think about alternatives too that you've practiced with, won't upset your stomach, but maybe for those initial days aren't necessarily your go-to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would just say, trust your training and maintain consistency. When I trained for Unbound, I was working, a lot of hours. So my weekday training was twice a week at the strength training gym and commuting to work. And sometimes I took a long route home. I never got more than 200 miles a week, even in my long training. But I did some longer rides on the weekend. I had a plan of every weekend of longer and longer rides, and just consistency of training will get you through it. Your body will adjust, and trust yourself that you can do it.
And enjoy it. It sounds like it's going to be awesome.
I think
I have to go. I'm cognizant of the time, and I'm going to need to go. So I'm going to drop off. I'll keep I probably don't need this slide share anymore. Or I can keep it up, but I'm going to stop my video and go. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Bye, Kimberly.
Yay, anything else? Any other questions or more on you, Shannon, that you want to talk about?
I got one comment.
Yeah.
So just regarding training, keep in mind also that like training, like Kimberly was saying, it's stress on your body when you're doing those hard rides, and other stress in your life is going to add to the stress. So if you're having like a really hard time at work or at home, I've found it good to scale back my training, because the last thing you want to do is just like burn yourself out. So it's like, it's not like your training and your miles and your intensity are separate from the things that are going on in your life. And sometimes, and this is one of the points Kimberly was making, it's just better to just rest. Like that's where the real magic happens, rather than like burning yourself out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my
Burnout is very real, especially if you're a person like me who like, when I'm burned out, I'm like disgusted by what I'm burned out by. And it takes me a long time to get myself back on the bike, or whatever, if it's running or if it's hiking, whatever I'm burnt out on. So that was really good advice.
Also, will you be posting this on our Insta link, the presentation?
Yeah, we can do that.
Sweet. This was great, ladies. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, we have all of our handles in our Instagram that we posted. So reach out. I can give you my number. We can chat. Like this isn't just this isn't your only opportunity to ask questions. So yeah, if you have an Instagram, which I'm assuming you do, because that's how you probably found out about this, give us a follow. And yeah, feel free. We're a resource here for you. So
yeah, definitely feel free to shoot any questions to the Rodeo Adventure Posse DMs. They get checked pretty regularly, and we've got a good pool of women to answer your questions.
Yeah.
End of next,
awesome. Yeah,
we'll take endurance riding to the stage race level and beyond, because we'll have a Posse Presents on bike packing.
Yeah, that'll be a good one for you to go to, Shannon, or listen to.
Yeah.
And it'll probably end up a little more gear heavy, just because that is kind of like the clutch piece.
Oh yeah.
Full blown stage race oriented, because it also might be more party pace oriented. But we'll still have.
I'm ready to move to that at this point.
You can still do stage racing and have the party pace. Like one of the things that I learned, like I have dear friends from Ireland now, like because you're going to find yourself pacing, right, with the same people. Have a blast. Like there was a group of 5 of us that were for the most part riding together, right? And it was so fun. That was my community, right? Like, high fives, like we'd hug each other at like, and granted we had a couple aid stations, we'd hug the volunteers and trust me, we were riding hard, right? But we're like, you know what? We're not going to the Olympics. We're not paid athletes. Like, let's enjoy this. And I have like lifelong friends now, and I've joined them prior to COVID, obviously, over in Mallorca, cycling. I got to join I got to go over with the Irish Cycling Club to Mallorca, and I met them in this awesome stage race because we were pacing together. So enjoy it. Find your tribe.
We did call this endurance events, not just endurance races. Everybody's got their own mode.
So my last question would be,
she was racing. She took second, but we had way more fun.
So I have one more, but it's really kind of specific. Any tips for neck pain? Like I finally got an opening into like one of the better like bike PTs in town. But just like as I'm starting to stack those efforts, like my neck is just like giving out. And I did like a really long ride that was in like 20 to 30 mile an hour winds for a very long while. And I just don't feel like I've ever really truly recovered. And then of course the race, like I wasn't gonna not do the race. So I did the race. But now I feel like I'm almost like in panic mode because I'm like looking at June on the calendar is not far away. Besides like PT, any ideas or tips or maybe just positive recovery stories?
Shannon, is it something that
bike specific strength training for long rides is super important? Like I personally would not underestimate the upper body and core strength. And I feel just from my experience, like I don't get any neck pain really. And I think that's the only thing that I feel like I probably do that helps it. And then, like you said, a bike fit. And like
And
you want your arms and your shoulders and your pecs and like your core to be really strong on the bike, especially off-road.
And I like your idea of PT. So about 5 years ago, here's another one. I have like the best stories because I've done everything wrong. But I had a herniated L5S1, right? And all I knew was that once I was on the bike, I was okay, but I couldn't get off the bike. Like it was so extremely painful. This was before I found out what was going on. And I went into the PT, right? And the PT was the only thing that, like, I got a steroid shot. I got all these other things, nothing worked. I love my PT, but, and I loved also what Kia said. That's so, dead on, but it may be also something else, right? So it sounds like you're doing the right things with getting the bike fit, going to PT. Because when I went in for the L5S1, it turns out like it affected the rest of my body, right? And he literally said, he was like, I could care less about your L5S1. It's connected to this and this and this and this. So in addition to your neck, if you're going, he may find out, or she may find out some other things that it's associated with, right? That by you going mine literally disappeared. And granted, it took 3 months of weekly PT visits, but don't be freaked out. It sounds like you're doing everything right. And, and add in, what Kia said, I think you'll be good. You still have some time.
Yeah, I think it'll help a lot because getting into a bike PT in Portland, Oregon, bike specific, forget about it. Like, especially this time of year. And so like, I felt like I called like, sorry, go ahead.
Have you had a fit?
Yeah, I've had fits on all my bikes.
Okay.
And then the therapist that I'm going to on Friday that I'll start seeing, they have like the nicest fit studio in Portland with like all the tech that goes along with it. So it's not just like the visuals, but like they do all the computer screening and the pressure points on your hands and your butt and all that stuff. So depending on what they say, I might have another one. Who knows? Maybe I've changed the way I pedal or something in the last year. I don't know. We'll see.
I just posted a link to the strength program that I use, and they posted a 4-week rotating program, and it's only $50. And all you need is like a kettlebell, a band, and I think that's pretty much it. They like developed it for COVID times when we couldn't go to the gym. And it's surprising how little you have to do to act once you get some strength going to actually maintain, even through race season. Like 20 or 30 minutes twice a week is even better than nothing. So I'm a huge proponent of strength training.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to do that.
Thank you. Thanks
for posting that.
We all want to do this now, Shannon.
I also do cycling through, or cycling coaching through that same couple, but the strength program I think would be good to just tag on if you can afford the $50.
Yeah, that's amazing. I just need to order.
At this point, I have so much time and energy and money invested. I'm like, if $50 is what's going to get me to the finish line, like I'll figure it out.
Oh, I totally agree.
You'll get there. You will.
One way or another, I'll walk if I have to. All 12,000 feet of elevation on Wednesday.
Okay, that's big.
One day is 12,000 feet in a day.
Yeah, I think Wednesday is 80 miles and 12,000 feet or something.
Oh, that's even worse than like the Breck Epic and Mike Mack. Like we all my friends that live up there in Breck are like, we would never do this race. Like, who put this together? And this what you're doing sounds even more crazy.
I might be wrong. It might be 10,000 feet that just one day.
Oh, just 10,000 feet like on your third day.
You're not really reducing it that much. That's epic. That sounds awesome.
I'm so scared, guys. I'm so scared.
Well, keep reaching out to us. Well, and we'd love to like watch your progress.
Yeah.
It's totally normal to be scared, right? Like this is a big deal, but it sounds like you're doing everything right.
Yeah, and we really are just, our bodies can truly do amazing things. I am always humbled by where my legs can take me. And when it does take me, I just am truly filled with gratitude because it's always amazing. It never becomes not amazing.